Hi, I'm Brad Kuvan. I'm the editorial director of Metal Forming Magazine at the Precision Metal Forming Association. Today I'm happy to be at the Schuler Hydroforming Production Center along with our senior editor Lou Kren and the hydroforming team here at Schuler. So thanks for having us today.
Welcome.
Why don't you guys just go ahead and introduce yourselves, and then we'll launch into some questions.
Chris McMahon. I'm the sales manager for the hydroforming group with Schuler.
I'm Jim Brown. I'm the engineering manager for Schuler.
And I'm Wayne Golonsky. I'm the project manager for the Schuler.
Great, thanks. Again, thanks for having us today. Chris, why don't we start off, just tell us a little bit about the hydroforming, the tube hydroforming process itself, and the services that Schuler provides here at the production center.
Tubular hydroforming, there's other forms of hydroforming, but we focus on tubular hydroforming here at Schuler, and we offer full turnkey solutions. So we work with the customer on the development of the part from a concept and help with insight on how to design that for the hydroforming process to determine is it a good fit for tubular hydroforming, and then from there we develop the tooling, can build the tooling, sell the tooling if they have a hydroform press, Schuler or not, and then we can ultimately make the production, which is what we're doing here. So that's why we say full turnkey, to use a buzzword, life cycle solution for tubular hydroforming.
Chris, describe then in a little bit more detail the services that you provide out of this hydroforming production center here.
Well, we are Schuler, and a lot of folks in the industry know Schuler is providing presses, and we do that. And that's where we sit in Canton, is our North American headquarters, where we support the market with the largest OEM service organization in North America. But what we also do here is hydroform production, tubular hydroforming production, again in the same building, and we're expanding on that. So we want folks to know that we'd love to sell you a press, but Jim and Wayne and myself, we'd love to sell you more tools and hydroform parts. So that's what we're doing here in Canton is the production.
To hear a number of tiers come to us and say, hey, we didn't know you run production here. We had a lead come from Metal Forming, that led us here to a part to look at, and they go, we didn't know you ran hydroforming here. We know you provide hydroforming presses and the equipment, but we didn't know you run production here.
So the new press is 5,000 ton. You have two presses on the floor already. So talk about the capacities of the various presses that you've got out there.
So right over here behind us is you can see to the right there or to our left is a 3,500 ton hydraulic press capable of 2,500 bar water pressure. So that's an extreme amount of pressure. It was a used Schuler press that we bought. We remanufactured it, brought it in, so it wasn't originally here. That added capacity. Then we have our big press here, which is the 8,500 tons. Big footprint, capable of 4,000 bar, which is 64,000 psi. If you think about it, that's water jet cutting forces. So there's a lot of pressure involved there. That's why the tonnage is so high.
And the difference between the three is part size and/or material, tensile strength, or gauge.
Our 8,500 ton hydroform press is the largest hydroform press in the United States.
And tooling-wise, you design and build?
We design and build the tooling, so we do all the FEA analysis to go into making that into a feasible, viable design, and then we do the tooling. We do the tool build, and then do the buy-off on our machines, and ultimately do the production on our machines as well.
Okay. And Chris, can you describe the market for hydroforming?
Market for tubular hydroforming. Tubular hydroforming's been around for probably 100 years, but a lot of our market now is frame components, trailer hitch tubes. It's evolved. Many people think of hydroforming and maybe some bicycle frames or plumbing fittings, and we've evolved away from that more to the automotive space primarily, dealing a lot, as I mentioned, in frame components, other applicable areas where you'd have maybe you would have a couple stampings welded together. Depending on the application, tubular hydroforming can bring that together, where you can make the profile out of a tube via the hydroforming process.
Oh, okay. And can you detail for us the typical tubular hydroforming process?
We take a tube. It's a welded tube. We cut the length. We load it into a die. We close the die, we fill it with water in our case, so we use recycled water, and we inflate the tube using axial cylinders to make the shape and utilize the die. The hydroform die is more like a mold than a stamping die when you take a look at it, and then we use that to make the shape, and then it comes out. Backing up what can go into the hydroform process, we start with a straight tube. We may pre-bend it and preform it to get it into the hydroform die. So yes, some, not all, get pre-bent, preformed to get the shape, because with hydroforming we can only expand out in the process. So we may need a preform operation to get that particular shape. The end result, the goal being the end result of the hydroform profile.
Mm-hmm. And even before that, simulation is very important in the process. Can you talk a little bit about that in the die build?
Yeah, the simulation, I should probably let Jim speak to the simulation, but yeah, we simulate to determine, is it feasible? I mean, a lot of customers can draw almost anything in CAD, but is it going to be feasible for hydroforming?
I mean, simulation's been around for a lot of years. I mean, stamping's had it for many, many years. It involved for hydroforming into a hydroform module, so it's specific for hydroforming, where we can actually simulate the bending process, the preforming, and the hydroforming, just like Chris explained. So we can look at all those steps in the simulation, see where material might not be able to stretch in or fill out, or where the areas of concern are, so that we can address it directly with the customer and make those changes before we ever build a tool. And sometimes that's just something we do up front, just to get a good quote out to the customer, so that we have a robust process and a part that's going to be feasible.
Oh, okay. And moving ahead, can you talk a little bit about the post-processing, the processes after the actual hydroforming process?
Yeah, we do. With the hydroforming process, you many times have some addendum because we're sealing around, in most cases around sometimes an oval tube. So post-secondary process, we do also perform for some customers, if wanted, is laser cutting. So we finish the part, trimming it, laser trimming it, adding additional holes to the product. We can only pierce so many holes in the part. It just depends on the end, again, getting to the end result, the desired end result. What's that part going to look like? So we do laser cutting. We also do some post-secondary fastener, adding some fasteners, some limited welding. But again, it all depends on what the customer wants. Some parts we just hydroform and ship out the door. Other parts we're going to laser trim it, we're going to laser cut it, we're going to add a fastener here or there, we might weld a pin on it, and then it leaves. So it just depends on what the customer ultimately desires, but those are the basic post-secondary processes.
And we're not out to compete against our tiers. All we want to do is add value add. Our core competency is hydroforming. So if you want a few extra things done to it that'll help you out in your assembly, that's what we want to offer.
And you've got the 5-axis laser cutting on the floor here?
Yes, we have two lasers, so yeah. Okay. Sometimes we can saw cut the parts, or they're maybe a left and a right hand are attached together. We separate them with the saw. So it just depends on what the application is and what the operation that's required for that application.
And you mentioned in some cases replacing other production processes for some of the parts that you're hydroforming, stamping and welding, for example, instead of a stamp to weld assembly, you can hydroform in one piece. Are you seeing a lot of parts that have been previously manufactured in that way? They want to maybe redesign them into hydroform parts, or are you seeing mostly originally specified hydroform parts?
I think both, but more the real advantages. I mean, and one of the competitive technologies to hydroforming obviously is stamping. So you can stamp in a very simple sense 2 C channels and then weld them together. Obviously, there's costs. You have 2 parts and you're welding together. What hydroforming can do is take a tube, and again, as Jim mentioned, through the simulation process, we can determine, is this going to be a viable option for hydroforming? And in that process, we can take a tube and come out with that same result, that same desired shape in the hydroforming process. And hydroforming can help us combine various processes. We've got one product for an off-highway customer that they had 9 different parts, a couple tubes, some stampings, and working with them over a couple of years, we were able to develop into one large hydroform tube. So that changed, the end result, again, was the same, their desired result, but it very much changed the look of that assembly. But through hydroforming, we're able to remove those processes and those costs for welding and stamping and fasteners, and give them the desired product they needed As I mentioned, hydroforming's very much like a mold, so it's a very consistent process as well. Through the tubular hydroforming process, you also work harden the material in many cases. So we can add shape and we can add the forms that are desired and actually work harden the material to a degree, and you give again, that end product what the customer desires in the end product.
Okay.
To add to Chris a little bit more, I mean, you asked. In the past, I've been involved with hydroforming for 30 years. So in the past, you saw a lot more of two stampings put together, and they'll send you over the file, say, hey, can you make this into a hydroform? Okay. That becomes a little more difficult because we don't understand everything the end customer is looking for, what attaches to it, how that fits in. So over the years, they've gotten better and better designing. It's a tube. It's got multiple sides. It can be shaped into different shapes throughout the length of the tube. So you make that fit for what you're looking for, and then we can take it from there and start to help you modify the design and make it feasible for the hydroform process.
Do you have an opportunity then with your customers to get involved at the front end of design and say, hey, we can probably look at hydroforming this particular?
That's what we'd like to do, and we try to get in as soon as we can. The sooner we can get into the design, the sooner we can get input and help before you get too many brackets and things in the way, and you can't, a lot of times they come in at the last minute and they go, I need to fit a tube in between and all through all these angles, and there's only limited, it's still a tube that can only do so many things in reality in the forming process. So that's where it becomes a little bit difficult sometimes. So the earlier we can get in, the better off.
So we're sitting here overlooking your hydroforming center, and we're here because you're expanding. So talk a little bit about what's behind the expansion. Why are you expanding this facility? Tell us a little bit about the equipment that you're going to be putting in once the expansion's all set.
We are expanding, and just as the market's evolving, lightweighting is another advantage of hydroforming. We see that important in any automotive or non-automotive vehicle, but greater capacity to better serve the market. Tubular hydroforming in the North American market is a bit of a niche. And we also sell hydroforming presses. We are Schuler, but unfortunately not a lot of folks want to invest in a hydroforming press. So we're expanding to better support the market that needs those tubular hydroforming components and that product, but doesn't want to make that investment because, as we all know, investments and those are longer term. So we're just further expanding what we've evolved over the past 20 years, and being the center of excellence is a cliche, but offering the hydroform production. As far as the equipment, it's going to be a new Schuler 5,000-ton press, and I know Wayne's got a lot more background on what the equipment is and everything we're doing.
Yeah, we're putting in ordered a new 5,000-ton press coming from Brazil. It's supposed to be here right around January. Some components are starting to come in December. It's going to go into the expansion over here, about a 10,000 square foot addition. So we have the press coming in, we have new benders that are be coming in, some new automation, robots. So it's going to be a whole new automated cell to allow for that product to be made from start to finish.
That'll be your third hydroforming press
Correct.
in this facility. Okay.
Correct.
So it's also faster. It has newer hydraulic components. It's a much updated version of a hydroform press than the models we have here that have been here for a while. So it'll help our throughput through the press to get more parts through there, and also it serves as a backup for the other presses. So we have much more flexibility and capacity to move things around and get more work into our facilities.
And again, it better helps serve the market because we also do, at times, emergency takeover. Things happen in the market to customers. Some customers may need us to do a buy-off on a new die that they're going to put in their process. So the expansion will give us that opportunity to better serve those customers when they call us, hey, we need a weekend or we need a week from you. We'll have more flexibility and greater ability to do that for the customer.
And you can also do tryout for those customers
yes,
too,
absolutely,
right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, because there are a lot of, but there are Schuler hydroform press as well as non-Schuler hydroform press, and we support, again, being part of Schuler, having the service network that we do. I mean, hydroforming is another service we can support.
Mm-hmm. Can you describe the technology in a little more detail? The new press coming in, the bending cell and the automation, and some of the unique benefits that such a package brings?
Yeah, and again, turn over to Wayne in a minute, but I just want to emphasize, I mean, we do the bending and the preforming to get to the hydroform process. I mean, are we a tube bender? No, in the sense that we don't just bend tubes, but we're bending tubes, we're preforming tubes in a preform press, or preform table or preform process to get it into the hydroform process. So that's what leads into the new 5,000 ton press. And as Jim mentioned, it's faster, newer than what we have here currently. Wayne, I know you're a lot closer to the intricacies of it, and as Wayne mentioned, it's coming from Schuler, Brazil, so keeping it all in the family.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, again, it's a new 5,000 ton press, and basically what it's going to be, you're going to have raw tubing come in to the facility. It's going to go into a bender. It's going to be loaded in by hand into a preform table, and then from that point on, it's just going to get robotically shuffled from point A to point B all the way through to the end on a conveyor system and out the back end. So
I think to elaborate on that, what you're asking is you got a part that's given to us. It needs to go on a tube bender to get that basic general profile. It has a bent geometry to it. Some do, some are straight, but if it has a bent geometry to it, you got to bend it to get it to that rough profile to begin with. The preforming is because that round bent tube won't fit into the hydroform die because there's sections in the hydroform die that are smaller than the round tube. The only way to get that round tube into the hydroform die is we preform it, which means we push it in and make it smaller so that it will fit into the hydroform die. So you bend it to the rough profile shape, which is centerline profile. You preform it so that it fits into the hydroform, and then the hydroform expands it out and takes the shape of the die.
And having all these capabilities that really expands, the flexibility and the ability to, really respond to a lot of, customer requests. Absolutely. Having all this under roof.
We have customers we've built tools for them. In the tool we were just looking at earlier, that tool itself, we built that tool for a tier supplier. They ran it for a year. Then they came back to us in their capacity. They had gotten another job where their capacity was full, and they asked us to take it back and run it for them. So now we're running the production. So we built it, we tried it out, we proved it out, did all the FEA. They ran it for a year, it came back to us, and now we're running it. So that's what we do for our customers. We help them too. They have overruns where they can't, their machine breaks down, whatever happens to them. Hey, can you run a job for us? And we try to help them out also. Our lines are very flexible. We can move things around. We can do bending, preforming. We manipulate it to do. We've changed it over the years for many different parts over the years. So very adaptable.
That's what the new addition and everything will give us, that flexibility. As Jim mentioned, that's a great story in a tier customer to an automotive OEM. The OEM extended a part in another program. These things happen. Our tier customer said, well, we don't have the capacity to maintain all of it. And they came back to us after they had been running it for a year and said, Schuler, we need your help to take it back. So we're going to be better positioned to do that for our customers. Ultimately, it all leads up to the OEM, but we're better positioned to do that in the future.
And this facility obviously is part of Schuler's global footprint. And you talked about how the press came from Brazil. Talk a little bit about then the advantages you bring to the marketplace by having that global footprint and support from different Schuler facilities all over the world, really.
Our affiliates in Germany, Schuler Germany, they had a big task in engineering a lot of the press, how it was going to be built, the engineering behind it, and then they sent that information back to Brazil. And then they started constructing it based off of that. So there's a lot of conversation between the three facilities, 3 countries, different time zones, different time periods, and that's how it came together.
So the presses were built all over and installed at different locations around the world, and now we're getting the same press. So the same model has been built many times, maybe upgrades as it went further along and technology changes and new controls, and that's what we're getting as the latest and greatest. But so that design has been there, but still you need the support of Germany, Brazil, and the other affiliates.
Terrific. Well, we're looking forward to seeing this, the new press when it comes in a few more months, and best of luck with the expansion.
Thank you.
And thanks for having us here today.
Thank you.